That's why Notion is so compelling and why it's so difficult. It's a system of systems, or it's a tool for making tools. It's the meta tool. From conversations today, Notion is the best place for. Actually, Ollie said something that really stuck with me, and I'm always picking up on good ways to say something. And he said, "Notion is the way to work." That's got a bit of bravado. I don't know. It's it's an interesting concept. Talking about Notion as less of a platform, more of selling work. The value proposition is no longer in the software, but in work itself. From the customer perspective, it's like knowledge and operations and the tool to support it don't exist without each other. They're not valuable apart from each other. You can't really separate them. And that's why we don't separate consultants and product experts. We've got that kind of value of product first, consultant first, or consultant first, product first.
I think it's one of the funniest things about why Notion Consulting is so hard and why we talk about change management in the way that we do, and how change management is like the most important part of the delivery, or else your Notion solution is not going to fail. And I narrowed in on a potential reason for that. And it's when you build a Notion solution for someone and you deploy this in a workspace, no matter what you do with permissions, and no matter how good the solution is, if someone doesn't like it, they can just put a new page in their private system, a private page, and then share that. And that becomes a replacement ecosystem that they can completely build everything differently in their own. It's like if you just take any other product and give the user and any other product a zone to do whatever the hell you want. And it's like, that's why our job is so hard. One of the reasons why our job is so hard. We have to build something that's less friction than that.
Yeah, I'm a believer in people take the path of least resistance. And you have to make something new and a little bit more difficult to fully understand at first. It's the learning curve. You have to get over that mountain or that hump to get to the point where it is a lot easier. And as consultants, you have to drag them over that hill to get, listen, it's better on the grass is greener on the other side. Come with me. Either that or drill a tunnel through that hill to get them there. But it almost is like vision casting in that sense of casting a compelling enough vision and having people believe in you enough to follow you to the promised land. Maybe the tall order of the job at hand for a successful Notion consultant.
Nailed it. Put it in the job description.
You got to be Moses. You got to split the Red Sea a little bit.
But the challenge is so funny because it's not just building a good system is part one. Two is helping people understand Notion. And then three is understand the system in Notion. And then four is getting them to build the muscle memory to use that system in Notion. And then five is building enough momentum that they are pulled into it. All of those need to be successfully done or none of it works.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to get the flywheel running fast enough to keep it running.
That's the intersection of product and consulting. Product expertise is being able to build a user experience that is intriguing enough to give them in there, and also something that they don't have to click view details to find a property that they know they need to use. Every time you create that additional friction, it's minus 10 points, even though every time you have something in the right place, it's like plus 0.01 point. And you're building that while also bringing the human side of it.
Is this going to be an episode on why Notion consulting is difficult?
I guess. Well, it's like, why is Notion hard for companies to adopt?
Yeah. There's something specific about Notion too. I don't know, call me ignorant because I am. For something like Salesforce or, another software out there, is there this same problem? They have to have consultants. But let me guess first and validate me if I'm right. Is that you have to use the software the way the software is built. There is no workaround ecosystem. There is no alternative. You just have to use it the way it's built. Whereas in Notion, you can just go around all of the expected requirements of how to use the software if you can even understand or find the expected way to use the software.
Exactly. Yeah. In Salesforce, you can misuse the tool, but you're misusing the tool within the guardrails of which the tool was set up. In Notion, you can take one component of the tool and build a whole new product inside of that component.
Yeah. Yeah, so in Salesforce, you can put in the field wrong or kind of misclassify something, but you're still working within the system. In Notion, you just build a different system.
You just forward slash database, and all of a sudden you have a project inside of a project's database, or a project's
Yeah.
database inside of a project inside of a project's database.
Yeah, that's why Notion's so compelling and why it's so difficult is like it's a system of systems or it's a tool for making tools. It's the meta tool. I love meta things. That's probably why I love Notion. Yeah, yeah. I mean, what you said is totally right. And I was even talking to one of our team members about this earlier in the week of like, it is the, I guess, burden, not burden. It is the joy.
The
for,
opportunity, the privilege.
it's our privilege. We get to do this uh, to not just know their business process so that they can kind of talk on the same terms with our clients, but then to know how to use the tool to do that process and that job. Not only that, but to know the tool that built the tool for them to do their job better so that they don't misuse the tool and then break their tool or build other tools around it. I'm being a little, intentional in the way I'm using the same words all the time because it is a little like it's a little bit of it's a lot. And that really is why we exist kind of at the intersection of tools and consulting or tools and business. It's, that classic, like we shape our tools and then thereafter our tools shape us. Yeah. We, not as important as the fact of like, they both need to exist. They both need to exist in harmony, like your intention for what you want to do and the tool for doing it. You can't just like be really good at business consulting and then get into Notion and Notion consult somebody and do it successfully if you're not really good at Notion. It's not going to work. You can't be really good at Notion, like the world's best, but not really understand business, especially their business, and think that it's going to be successful because it won't. Like, what a rare blend of skills that the world just, there's no college class for how to do this because it's so specific to Notion, right? There's probably a rare overlap of like, you learned business, but you also learned like management information systems or, systems thinking or things like that. But it's got to be on a technical level.
There are a few things that feel better though when it comes to work than successfully getting multiple people onboarded into a tool. Because there is a day when they reach that aha moment and it's like, yes, you've found it. And all of a sudden they realize why Notion is so much better and will be so much better than every other tool they've ever worked in. And that's it's really like beautiful thing to accomplish and experience. And it only gets better when they start to be the person that evangelizes it at their organization. Because one of the key things in how to make these succeed is not just us pounding our chest and pounding on the wall like this is the thing for you. It's them being able to, or somebody at their org or a collection of people at their org to find and experience that, and then be able to evangelize it.
Yeah. Yeah. Teach a man to fish instead of catching them a fish, I guess, in a sense.
Or teaching them to be excited about fishing.
Yeah.
I'm intentional on that one because it's not like they all of a sudden just flip the switch and become that rare blend of consulting and Notion knowledge, but they get the moment of it.
We're talking about our people, like Notion Consulting, Notion consultants.
Both.
Yeah. This is a loose thread, but something that I was thinking about last week, and would love your sanity check on this, even though I think you've seen this already. But kind of the layers, the conceptual layers that we kind of go through in Notion Consulting as a process. And I don't want this episode to be about unpacking that process, but in terms of why Notion Consulting is so hard, the 6 layers are strategy, which feeds into ontology, which also needs a good understanding of process of the business. Then it turns into encoding that into a software like Notion, which then feeds into adoption of that software built on those foundations, and then into ongoing evolution. And I say all those things because the 2, I think, most difficult layers and the ones that are critical to get right are ontology and adoption. Ontology, using the buzzword these days, especially with AI, but like really it's so applicable to what we do because it's not the Notion databases per se. It's not just your ERD. It's not just like, oh yeah, you have these databases. It's understanding actually from the company perspective, tool agnostic. This is how you understand your company. This is how you work. this is what a customer is. This is when they start being a customer, when they stop. These are the statuses that they go through. This is how it interacts with, this team and all those things. This ontology is how you can write about the business without talking about Notion. That's where the encoding process comes in, is like, how do you translate all of that ontology plus their process into a tool and encode it into Notion? And I think a lot of Notion consultants really focus on that. They take for they just take people at their word. This is our company, but they're only getting that really small slice. Like, they're getting the one perspective of the company and not the actual entire ontology of the company. And that's where it can, that's where it's actually really fragile. But they focus on the encoding rather than really understanding the business super well and then focusing on adoption. Because, at the end of the day, adoption is probably more important. Actually, I'll just say it. Adoption is more important than getting the tool right or getting the encoding right. People can work in less than perfect conditions. Like, they can work with a tool that actually does have a lot of friction, or their process can be pretty friction infused. But as long as they know that this is how we do the work and it's consistent and standard and expected, and they adopt it and they do it, that's better. It's like the phrase, execution eats strategy for lunch. Just getting the thing done is better than having a perfect system. And that's where I think the Notion community, myself early days included, was like so hyper focused on like the perfect system, which doesn't exist.
Especially not in Notion, because you can create a new system anywhere inside of it. The frameworks makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I think it's probably a pretty good guide for if you were to wholesale take the concept of a digital transformation for an organization and plot it out in a roadmap. Like, those are the key phases that you would go across it. I think the challenging thing with a lot of the work that we do is we don't have the organizational wide buy-in to really truly define or influence the first and second piece. So a lot of the time we start at the third and fourth piece and then bleed into the fifth, right? So we eventually go up that funnel, but a lot of the times we don't have the authority to do that. So it becomes a little bit of a juggling match of like, where do we push on the ontology and really refine it versus where do we not, because we're not overstepping on other stakeholders or other concepts within the business that we don't have insight to or the, again, authority to speak to. And when do we
Yeah.
do that? It's a game we always play.
Yeah, I feel like on this spectrum, going through those layers, those kind of frameworks, there's like a tipping point where it's like in the early layers, you're taking a lot, like you're receiving a lot, especially at the very highest level, like business strategy. We're not informing strategy. We may get to the point where we can kind of help be a part of that conversation once there's trust and we actually understand a lot. So it's never fully linear, but early stages, we're pulling a lot. And then as we kind of tip over, especially once we get to encoding, that's where we start having, the professional expertise and the opinion of like, no, this is how you should do it. So it's like we pull, and then as soon as we start tipping over, it's like a seesaw in my mind. Once you get over that middle section, you start tipping over and like, no, okay, like this is how we're going to do it. We're going to drive encoding. We're going to drive adoption. We're going to drive evolution. And of course, once it's ongoing, there's some give and take and some collaboration on that. But yeah, we got to
I'd
balance
argue
that.
we're really influential on the process piece too. A lot of times we do influence that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. There's like early days in the engagement and then ongoing where that definitely shifts as well.
that's very accurate. It's at the beginning, everyone just wants a solution, and then as they start to use it and identify problems, they're like, "Oh, wait, we need to revisit. Like, why are we doing this in this way?" And that's when they start to hear the wisdom, if you will, from our organization on like, this is, let's revisit it. Like, what are the true pains? What are the true ways that we want to organize around us? And then how do we build the system to enable that?
Yeah, the tool, I think building the tool can surface a lot of the discrepancies that you didn't know existed, in the same way, again, that like writing is thinking. Like when you think that you have a clear thought, but until you can, what's the old saying? Like, unless you can teach it really clearly, you don't fully understand the concept. And it's so funny when you think you know something really well and then you try to teach somebody, you start to stumble over your words and like, oh, there's actually a lot of gaps in my knowledge here, or even confidence in a full understanding of this.
Which is why the imperfect solution up front is a good thing to experience because there's two things at play here. One, no one has ever had the ability to build their operating system from scratch, really. At least very few organizations have. So when they're initially doing it, they're trying to recreate what they had in their previous systems because it's something that they know. And
Uh-huh.
that exercise in and of itself opens up the gaps upstream of like our process and ontology, so on and so forth. And then the second piece is they over time start to realize, oh, I don't need to recreate the systems that we had because I can build anything. So it becomes you're switching from like trying to mimic a previous workflow to okay, I can now envision what the future is and build towards that. And that's a really incredible client journey because at the beginning it's like it's much less exciting, but once they start to understand, oh, this is what Notion enables me to do, they start to see all the other possibilities that are available to them.
Yeah, I can't resist a little bit of philosophy. It's like Plato's cave. Did you ever learn about that one in
No.
philosophy college courses? Well, now that I brought it up,
Explain it
it
to
just
us.
no, dang it. Well, it's just the idea of like when you're in a cave, all you know is the cave, and
Ah,
there's
yes.
there's a picture to it of like you see shadows on the wall from a fire that you can't see, and you think that the shadows are reality, right? And when you kind of start coming out of the cave, you start seeing like, oh, actually, those shadows were cast from something else more real, but you still exist in a cave. You don't even realize that there's a whole world out there, and then you finally see the cave opening, and you go out into the world. So it's like not to call not to call our clients cavemen, but it's like a lot of times like you start in the cave and you got to like come out of the cave and yeah, we got to work with people where they're at of like we don't expect people to fully realize one the full extent of what Notion can do or even like what we can be a part of because they're not going to know how deep we can go into their business and help them in their business really far upstream because they're not sometimes even hiring us at that level. They're hiring us at the encoding, the implementation level. But it's like once you get in, you start seeing those gaps, like you talked about. That's where you're like, oh, I was just working with shadows. Like actually the real problem is process. Or maybe further in, the real problem is, oh, we actually don't have a fully clear understanding of what our business is, what the entities in it are, like what we're even like, do we have a common language? And those are some of the bigger problems.